Thank you all for joining us here at the Citizens Campaign. Today is our Police Reform Roundtable. My name is Carol Deutsch Wright, and what a pleasure it is to serve as your moderator today. I am a senior team member at the Citizens Campaign. Welcome, everyone, those of you that are also on Facebook as well. Over the next hour, we will discuss how we build trust between the police and the community and how we make our cities and towns safer by putting de escalation front and center in policing. We're so pleased to have a distinguished and knowledgeable panel, which includes Mayor of Patterson, Mayor Andre Saya, Perth Amboy Police Chief Roman McKeon, founding member of the National Latino Coalition of Officers, Richard Rivera, and Citizens Campaign founder Harry Pozinki. Leader also of the Frontline Youth, Samantha Castro, is also joining us today as a guest, a special guest. We will lead off this roundtable with brief opening remarks from the panelists and from Samantha. Then I will pose questions to the panel. I'd like to announce to all of you that are viewing, that are with us here on Zoom and Facebook. Well, on Facebook, there is a Q&A button that you will have an opportunity to place your questions in at the end of our discussion. On Facebook, you can place your questions in the comment section and we will have those. Now, let me introduce our panelists for their opening remarks. Rich Rivera is going to start off with his opening remarks, following Chief Roman McKeon, Mayor of Patterson Saya, and then opening remarks are coming from Harry Pozenki. In that order, please. Richard?
Thank you, Carol, and thanks for having me on this discussion. It's a watershed moment in our nation's history when we're talking about community collaboration, police accountability, and transparency. So I look forward to the discussion. We made a lot of headway in New Jersey. That includes some major cities such as Patterson. Perth Amboy is doing a fantastic job with overhauling their accountability mechanism for internal affairs. So we're seeing a lot of progress, and it has to do with community engagement and officials listening to their stakeholders. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Chief?
Okay, my name is Roman McEwen. I'm the chief of police here in Perth Amboy. I've worked here in the city of Perth Amboy for 33 years. So I've been there, done it, seen it all. I have a career in patrol. I was always an officer that was on the streets. And I've always felt a certain connection with the community that we serve. And I've understood a long time ago that the key to any successful police department is having the cooperation of the community that you serve with. Our job is to be public service providers. Although we are obviously entrusted with law enforcement perspective of our job, the majority of our job is helping our community and getting our community to trust us. We were one of 6 departments in the state to be recognized by the Attorney General's Office for Community Police Partnership a couple of years back, which I take great pride in. And I look forward to seeing policing move into the 21st century. And thank you for allowing me to be part of this panel.
Thank you. Mayor?
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate the fact that the Citizens Campaign has afforded me an opportunity to discuss how we can improve policing here in 2021. 2 years ago, I unveiled the Tools for Trust, and some of the tools within that toolkit included, for the first time, having Patterson police officers wear body cameras, which they started in December of last year. Also, an audit top to bottom of our police department to see how we can improve our practices, protocols, and procedures. And finally, I'm proud to say that last week, standing side by side with Harry Pozinki, I signed an executive order creating a de-escalation task force in our city. and I'll elaborate on that later. But thanks again, Carol.
Thank you.
Officer that was on
that later. Thanks again, Carol.
Great, thank you. Harry?
Yes, thank you, Carol. And I just want to thank you to all the panelists that are here. Very, very fortunate to have people of goodwill that are willing to work together in the benefit of the community. The only point I'd like to make by way of introduction here is that we don't need to be captive to the binary choice of either opposing or supporting the police. We need to look at the community as a whole and see how we can come together and create the kind of culture change that's necessary as we're moving public safety into the 21st century. I think that the work of civic trustees and leaders like Samantha Castro, and the work of volunteers like Rich Rivera have really helped us a great deal. And I think taking a no-blame, solution-focused approach is what brought us together with the police departments in both Perth Amboy and Patterson. And I'm very grateful for the individuals who made that possible, and they're here with us today.
Thank you. Samantha Castro, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for the invitation. My name is Samantha Castro. As previously stated, I am the founder and president of Frontline Youth. I guess if you're unaware, Frontline Youth is a nonprofit organization run by youths, self-identified youths, and it's a call to action for all young people to enter the front line of human rights in the effort to develop a more equitable and compassionate future. And using that platform, I was able to work with people like Harry, like Chief Roman, and Carol, and a lot of other people to help practice the no blame approach and help instill, reform into Perth Amboy and foster communication, most importantly, open dialogue, trust, and honesty with myself and the police.
Thank you for that, Samantha. And I just want to announce Samantha is working while she is a guest on this roundtable discussion here today. So to our panel discussion, each of our panelists will have an opportunity to respond to our questions, and then individual panelists, if you would like to comment on that question, you will have an opportunity to do so. Chief Roman McKeon, tell us, do police officers want more training in de-escalation, or are they resistant to it?
Well, there's a misconception that police officers are reluctant to find non-violent ways to handle violent situations. And that's absolutely inaccurate. We look forward to learning. We want to be able to use the power of our voice, to use the power of our body language, to bring a situation down before we have to resort to bodily force. And that starts at our police academies, right? Our police academies historically have spent the vast majority of our training time on use of weapons, defensive tactics, how to handcuff people, how to handle people in violent situations. And they haven't actually taught officers the skills, how to use the power of their voice, the power of their presence to bring situations down. Law enforcement is not black and white. There is always a gray aspect of law enforcement. And you have to understand that certain situations require a certain response. And officers are very pro-training. They're very pro de-escalation, because ultimately de-escalation allows us to go home safe to our families, as well as the person we're dealing with. Nobody wants to use force. I can tell you right now, I feel very blessed because the way I was raised and the way I've always carried myself is through the power of my voice. And like I mentioned earlier, I've been basically a lifelong patrolman. I was always on the streets. I've maybe had to put my hands physically in a violent confrontation on someone maybe 10 times my entire career. That's over 30 years just because I know how to talk to people. And also, I've never had to use my weapon. I've only taken my weapon out of my holster one time in 33 years. It's about understanding people. It's about the power of communication. That's all de-escalation is about. You have to learn how to talk to people. And all officers historically have not been trained in this technique. I try to teach it from a leadership point, from my position downward to the officers. But I think de-escalation training is something that we look forward to as police officers, because we want to be able to bring situations to a closure without having to put our hands on somebody. The Attorney General just put out a directive that every police department has to have certain de-escalation training completed for their entire police department by the end of 2021. One is called integrating communications assessment and tactics, which simply is ICAT, which teaches officers how to de-escalate situations where you're not posed with a suspect with a weapon or something that he can hurt the officer, and also deal with mentally ill people. We need to have more of an emphasis on dealing with those that have that are mentally ill, because society unfortunately doesn't put enough emphasis on dealing with these people. And it's a very difficult situation when you come upon someone and your basic communication doesn't work because they have things going on that we don't understand. So it's all about understanding. And we also have active bi-partnership for law enforcement training, which is ABLE, which also teaches officers how to, if they see a fellow officer acting in an aggressive manner, how to de-escalate that officer to prevent it from becoming something more than it needs to be. So all of these things are welcomed with open arms by our department. And I think as law enforcement as a whole, we all welcome that. So yes, we do look forward to the escalation training. It's a positive, it's a win-win for us, it's a win-win for the community. And hopefully it'll foster a better relationship between us and the community that we serve.
Fostering better relationships. Harry, so how were we able to bring the police and the protesters together in the town of Perth Amboy to adopt de-escalation? You know all about it. Talk to us about it.
Well, look, the Citizens Campaign operates on a no blame approach, and that was the first door opener. As Samantha said in the beginning, and I think the chief said that there was suspicion on both sides. But when we said, look, we're going to proceed on a no blame approach, we're not here to play gotcha. We're here to make better public safety and develop a guardian culture. That opened the door, and discussions proceeded with the chief, with the heads of both the Fraternal Order of Police and the Policemen's Benevolent Association. And then we had guidelines, practical guidelines, that we weren't going to come up with solutions that we were just going to pull out of thin air, that we would come up with solutions that are based on evidence of success, that work within the existing budget, and that benefit the community as a whole. And as we began to do research with the help of people like Rich Rivera, we found that a comprehensive approach to de-escalation, and that means training, but also hiring and reporting and everything else one can do to use force as a last resort, resulted in three pieces of evidence. The first was that use of force incidents dropped by over 28%, and excessive use of force virtually evaporated. The other was that because use of force declined so rapidly, lawsuits involving use of force declined, and the costs associated with that decline actually saved money that can be used for better training. And last but not least, we found that police officers experienced 36% less injuries when they're using de-escalation. So it became clear from the evidence that everybody would benefit if we just would look to find out what worked and use the kind of protocols and the kind of training procedures that are out there right now and available to us. But this wouldn't have happened unless the chief had taken a no blame approach, Samantha had taken a no blame approach, and we worked together. And I won't tell you it was all smooth or easy. There were ups and downs and times of distrust that would surface. But as long as we kept to solutions that were evidence-based and that benefited everyone, we were able to find a solution, I think, that will help not only Perth Amboy and Patterson, but police departments and communities across the country.
And speaking of Patterson, Mayor Andre, congratulations on the action that you all took last week. But how do we keep the focus on de-escalation, especially when crime rates are just rising in many of our cities? How do we do that?
Thank you, Carol. And I definitely want to dovetail on what Harry was saying, because we have to focus on evidence-based practices that are effective elsewhere. We are strong proponents of that. And what we want to do is we want to prevent crimes from occurring and want to solve the crimes as well. And by building the bond between the police and the people that we protect and serve, that'll help us, because it'll go a long way. What I've heard now in the current climate is that not many members of the community are willing to cooperate. And so we have to get beyond that. And I feel like de-escalation is a step in the right direction as far as restoring faith in our police department is concerned, and reestablishing that trust that is so necessary. So as Harry was citing some of the statistics, I do want to also emphasize the fact that data is important. It tells the story, and that if it's worked elsewhere, then we'll have to make it work here. And I've spoken to our police leadership. They are on board. And that's why we signed that executive order, to send the message to not only the guardians, our police officers, but also to the public that we protect and serve. We feel like de-escalation in Patterson will be effective.
Great. Keeping the focus on de-escalation. Does anyone else want to comment on that? We're going to move right on to our fourth panelist. And please feel free to come back to any of these questions as we go along. So Rich, if more police departments make use of force records and de-escalation performance explicit factors in promotion decisions, tell us, Richard, how do we make sure it's done fairly?
So that's a great question, Carol. What we're doing is, in this process, encapsulating what the other three panelists had elaborated on. The chief regarding training, the mayor regarding reduction of incidents, and Harry relating to evidence-based policies and procedures. The promotional process would be no different. First and foremost, this information that we're talking about when we're relating to performance evaluations and not being subjective, but being fair to the officers in the calculation when it comes to their promotion, should be a process. There should be a calculus attached to it so that all the officers are well aware of it. Any officer in the state of New Jersey now that desires a promotion studies from the law enforcement handbook, goes to private classes and study groups. This would be another component of that, meaning they know well in advance what the calculus is, what the metrics are, and how that's going to be used in evaluating them for promotion. So I believe that it would be fair and it would be equitable. And we're not dictating what the terms are regarding that. And that should be something that's done on a holistic approach where there's a consensus building upon it. Because it's something that's relatively new, we could see that it's going to be experimental, that there's going to be a lot of questions involved. But as it gains traction, officers leading up, like the chief said, learning how to use your verbal skills, learning how to use your command presence, they're going to factor a lot of these things in, not only in their everyday encounters with people, but say in the back of their mind, hey, wait a minute, this could potentially also affect my career path. So we're really looking forward to the process, Carol.
Great. Any other comments on Richard's response? Before you do,
I'll just say one thing, because we did have questions from members of the police department about the part of this de-escalation policy that ties individual officers' promotions to their de-escalation and use of force records. We wanted to make sure, as Rich pointed out, that wouldn't be subjective, that would be based on the protocols for which they're trained. So if you're being measured against your own training, and the practices and protocols that that training calls for. Police officers are happy to do that. They want to be trained, they want to be professional. They just don't want subjective determinations of whether they could or shouldn't have used force in a given situation. So I think that a measuring based on the training protocols is something that ensures fairness. And I'm glad we had Rich's advice so we could get there.
Great. So we have
Okay, Carol, real quick.
Sure.
In Perth Amboy, we do look at someone's use of force in terms of promotion. We do have to follow civil service guidelines, so our hands are kind of tied into that. But what officers, there's a little misunderstanding with officers, because when they hear the word use of force, it could determine whether they get promoted or not. Anytime you put your hands on someone, because whether it's justified or not, requires the use of force report.
Mm-hmm.
We in Perth Amboy, we're very diligent about that. So if you have someone that is violent and has to be taken to the ground for whatever reason, and 5 officers put their hands on them, 5 officers have use of force reports generated with their name attached. So it's important to educate the officers too that we're not looking to hurt officers by utilizing use of force in terms of promotional opportunity. What we look at is officers that use of force inappropriately. So there's a big difference, because you might have 20 use of force reports that you generated in the course of a year, but 19 of those just involved you assisting someone else doing an arrest. But as part of our protocol, you also have to fill out a report. And we have bypassed people very recently, as a matter of fact, for having several incidences of inappropriate use of force. And that was a factor in whether they got promoted or not. So we are big advocates of it, and it does keep the officers in line as well, because they understand that they were held to a certain standard. And when that standard is applied, you get better compliance within your entire police department.
Great. So in our Q&A area, there are some questions. I'd like to report that the chat room on this platform is disabled. Please place all of your questions in the Q&A area. Hit that button and you'll be able to place your questions there, as well as on Facebook. Please place those questions in the comment section. Chief Roman, you've got another question about those body cameras.
Yes.
Is there a consensus for officers to wear body cameras on when shift begins and off? Here's the question, where it ends or public engagement ends? I hope you understand the question.
No, I do. Body cameras.
Okay.
No, we actually beat Patterson by a couple of years, because we've had body cameras since the end of 2017. But so we understand the value of body cameras. The officer is required to put it on whenever they have contact with a citizen, and then when that contact ends, they shut it off. It's not on the entire shift, otherwise the battery is going to go dead. So it's only required to be on during an actual encounter with the citizen in the community. Mm-hmm. And every officer in our department is required to carry one, whether you're narcotics, whether you're community policing, no matter what your assignment is, you're required to have one on you at all times.
And Carol, if I may,
sure.
Chief, you got us beat. You said, was it?
I got you.
But I wasn't mayor in 2017.
I know.
However, I want to point out that we phased it in. We had a pilot program. So we had 24 of our officers we started with, and then expand to over 100. And now, you saw the recent announcement yesterday in Camden with the colonel, the state police, Pat Callahan, and the governor, stating that they will be providing funding for body cameras throughout the state. And Patterson will be in line to equip almost every officer. We have nearly 400 police officers here in the city. So as a result of the funding that should be coming relatively soon, almost every officer in Patterson will be equipped with a body camera.
No, and what the public doesn't understand, and I know you do, Mayor, is body cameras are very expensive.
Yes.
Especially for a
storage.
Department of your size.
Storage.
Yeah, storage
Yes.
costs a fortune. Yes.
Yep.
And then you have to have redaction. There's all other things that are involved in body cameras. But I'll tell you what, our officers initially were reluctant because they thought, everybody's going to watch what I do. but the vast majority of time, your officers do act professionally, do job the right way, and it protects them more than it'll ever hurt them. And it also protects the public because it provides transparency. You know, there's no mistrust between the police because there's an interaction and there's a question as to what took place. You pop in the video, you see exactly what happened, and a lot of times, you know, people's perception isn't the reality. But body cameras let you see front and center what actually took place.
And
it
Carol,
benefits, yes.
If I may,
Yeah.
I mean, Chief's right. It creates accountability on both ends with the police officer and the individual that police officer is interacting with. And he's also right about how expensive it is, particularly with the storage, because a previous administration, when I wasn't mayor, they were going to be given body cameras. They just made the decision they couldn't afford it because of the expense that they would be incurring because of storage.
Great. So Richard, I believe you provided some information to us a while ago about the benefits of this whole issue of how it also protects police officers as well, prevents harm, injury to police as well. Could you just elaborate on that for a moment?
Sure. So now, like the chief was alluding to, with the new attorney general's guidelines on body-worn cameras, and even the mayor being fully aware of their utilization, people are going to be aware that they're on camera, which may de-escalate or defuse a situation on them, because now suddenly it's them, it's their image. Do they really want to be portrayed however they're going to act out on? And sometimes what we see is a de-escalation on their part. And this is a great conversation on body-worn cameras, because people need to understand what some of the technical aspects are when officers are required to put it on, and when it's buffering. Buffering means that the camera is running, and a lot of times when you see a video that's been released publicly to the media or it's on YouTube, you don't hear any audio. There's nothing coming out for the first 30 seconds, because that's the buffering mode that the camera's doing. There's nothing that an officer is tampering with it. They don't have the ability to do so. So there's a lot of misnomers, and it's a great discussion that we could have in the future regarding simply just body-worn cameras and how they function. There's also issues with different vendors, because you have 30,000 police officers in New Jersey, and the light switch got turned on yesterday and everyone's required to wear cameras. A lot of the vendors can't even keep up with the business. They either don't have enough storage space. Some of the manufacturers aren't keeping up with production. So as helpful as it is as a tool, we need to be mindful that it's another product. It's a device. It's a technology that's being used, and it's sometimes flawed, and it's not always perfect.
Great. Richard, thank you for that. Harry, here's a question that's presented to you. They say that you have used the term guardian and warrior. Explain that, please.
Well, you know, there was a lot of experimentation with de-escalation years and years ago, but there was a point in our history where we started to build more of a warrior culture in the police departments. We had a war on drugs, note the word war. And we militarized the police, providing military equipment, used military equipment, things of that sort. And that's why I say it's really a terrible thing to get into the blame game, because you're blaming police officers who are out there, the vast majority of them putting their lives at risk, doing their job to protect us. But we have, on average, as a nation, provided police officers 8 hours of force training for every 1 hour of de-escalation training. So we've effectively primed them to use force, and then we blame them. It's not a good system. When we want to change the culture and change it to a guardian culture, we, the people who elect our officials and the elected representatives, have to provide the training that police officers want to be professionals in the 21st century world of public safety. And that's where we can transition to be a guardian culture. Things like cameras and all, that's good. We need accountability. We need accountability in every aspect of government, but that's still after the harm has been done. If we practice de-escalation in our hiring practices, finding people with strong interpersonal skills, in our training, our preliminary training, in a per incident training, revisiting any time force is used to find out if there were better ways to approach that situation. And we continually monitor ourselves to find better and better ways to train for de-escalation. We're going to move from a warrior culture to a guardian culture, and that's all of our responsibility.
Thank you, Harry. Any other comments regarding that question? Here's another one on training. It's a major concern that we're seeing here. How are you incorporating cultural competency into the ongoing training of police?
Carol, if I may, Patterson was just designated the most diverse city in New Jersey.
Really?
Yes, I'll cite the source, nj.com. So Star Ledger has the index. And we have to be very mindful that we are multicultural. We have a large Muslim population. We have a large Latino population. We have a large African-American population. And so our officers have to be culturally competent. That's one thing that I feel elected officials should be as well. You have to understand the people that you represent. And in that vein, you have to understand the people that you protect and serve. And so that's why we're attempting to infuse in our training cultural competency, because quite frankly, I don't like the term tolerance. It's more like understanding and appreciating.
Chief Froman, would you like to?
Yeah, well, I have to agree 100% with the mayor, what he just said, because he's absolutely correct. It's all about understanding, right? Because that's one of the big things in Perth Amboy, right? We're a very cultural, diverse community as well, as you know, Carol. And a big proponent of that too, in terms of cultural training within your department, is having a culturally diverse police department. Your police department represents your community, you know, your membership, then you learn from the fellow officers who grew up in that community, the traditions, the different ways that, you know, they behave and stuff like that. And it breaks down a lot of misunderstanding. So the key to that is also to have a police department which is representative of the community you serve. And, you know, fortunately in Perth Amboy, we've been fortunate to have that with us, you know, and I think that's the key for police departments and understanding with the community too.
Speaking of representing the community, Harry, here's a question, and Samantha, for the both of you. What does the Citizens Public Safety Advisory Council look like? What does it require of youth members? And will it be representative of the community? Samantha, would you like to comment on that, or did you have another question?
Yeah, I was just gonna jump onto the last one, but this is a good segue. I guess a big change in culture that we've seen recently, especially over the past year, is the influx of youth that are, you know, becoming very active and very vocal when it comes to politics and human rights and things of that nature, civic duties. And so, you know, our advisory council is representative of that, where we have youth members in our council that have a voice and have a say in what's going on in their own community. We also have to take a class at Middlesex County College to be able to participate in this council. And along with the varying age groups, there's also, you know, women, men, people of different sexual orientations, people with different, you know, gender identities, and also with different experiences. Whereas I just started this maybe a year or so ago, there's people like Harry that have been doing work like this for decades and, you know, have way more experience than I would. But, you know, that collaboration of, you know, new blood and, you know, those that are a bit more wiser and a bit more experienced, they allow for a good collaboration where we can, you know, use the tools that Harry supplies us with, such as evidence-based solutions, but with the same vigor, I guess, and creativity that comes with having youth on the panel as well.
Absolutely.
I still have a memory of what that vigor was like a long time ago, Samantha. So listen, I think that the advisory board that's part of this de-escalation policy that passed here in Perth Amboy and also in Patterson is very well structured, because Samantha led a protest of over 1,000 young people, and those people will be represented on this advisory board. There will also be a police officer with experience in training and a police officer with experience in community relations serving on that advisory board. There will be young people and older people. In other words, the entire community coming together. Because look, if we really are honest with ourselves, de-escalation should not stop at the borders of a police department. We need to de-escalate as a society. And that begins with a no-blame approach and the dialogue that Samantha and the Perth Amboy Police Department and its officers entered into. And it's just the beginning. I think it's going to produce better and better solutions as we go forward. We talked about community sensitivity. It's not just to race or gender, it's also to age groups, as Samantha pointed out. And so learning how to talk to each other and see what each other's expectations are and be one as a community is a beautiful experience.
Thank you for that. I would like to respond to a question about no blame problem solving. And I'd like to announce that you can visit our website for more information. There's even an online course that's available for you to take, and it's at our website. And that's www.thecitizenscampaign.org. Harry, perhaps you can give a little bit more information about that online course. I think there's a certificate available to those that take it as well.
Right. The advisory board, the de-escalation advisory board that will be formed now in Perth Amboy and Patterson requires that any participant take this online course. It's 10 video classes of 5 to 10 minutes each. It can be taken at your own pace. It's offered by Rutgers University. It's offered by Middlesex County College and other colleges around the country. As you pointed out, Carol, it's also available on our website. And anyone who takes this course can, if they complete it, they will receive a certificate of training in leadership and no blame problem solving. And it's that kind of training that allows you to work together with others to find solutions that are based on evidence. If it's my idea versus your idea, it's all going to be about identity. But if it's about what works, where's the evidence for what works, we can all come together on the common ground of evidence. And that's what you learn in this no blame problem solving. Citizens who have taken this course have passed over 300 local laws with an over 90% success rate. We can start becoming part of the problem-solving capacity of this country and get ourselves out of the rut of the blame game if we take a few minutes to take a course like this. And the good news is it's free.
It's free and can be placed on that resume. The fact that you've taken that course. Hey, in the Q&A area, someone wants to know, how does someone become a member of the Citizens Advisory Board?
All right. Actually, the civic trustees passed a law several years ago statewide called the Citizen Service Act. And what that law mandates is that every municipality have a directory of all of its boards and commissions, an advisory board like this, but the planning board, human rights commission, all of them, and that there be an application form available at the city clerk's office. So anyone who wants to be a member just simply fills out the application form, puts down their experience and their commitment, and then it's up to the appointing authority to choose the members. And they'll be rotating, so there'll be room for members, even if you're not on in the first instance.
I have a question here. Unless our panel members, anyone wants to comment on that? Here's a question. What are the consequences for officers who do not de-escalate but use unreasonable force?
Well, I mean, any use of force in Perth Amboy, whether we have a civilian complaint or not, is investigated. And anytime officers file a use of force report, that incident is reviewed, their body cameras are reviewed, whether or not we have a complaint or not. because sometimes the use of force can be cured through further education. It can be further training, right? I'm a big proponent of training. But if any type of force is seen on video that crosses the line, so to speak, it is automatically sent to our county prosecutor's office. And then it is given to them to review, and then based on their recommendation, then we move forward. But if any officer is found using illegal, excessive force, they are held accountable. Again, it goes to our prosecutor's office first. If they don't find it's of a criminal nature where they want to prosecute, it's kicked back to our department. And then we handle it internally, generally through retraining, internal discipline, and things of that nature. But we take it very seriously.
Mayor Saya?
Yeah, I want to dovetail on what the chief was saying as far as use of force is concerned. If there are an excessive number of instances, there's an early warning period where you'll have to put that person essentially on the bench and reassign that individual. So in the past, Patterson, we've had well-documented cases where we just had to put people on the bench. We had to remove them altogether. In fact, we have been policing our police. And there are several officers, unfortunately, that took part in that misconduct and were summarily penalized as a result. And that's why we feel that Patterson is the ideal place for de-escalation.
Carol, if I could add something to that. I think that this calls up the very important distinction between after the fact reform and preventative reform. And yes, if an officer uses excessive force, it's illegal, it's reported, but the preventative approach, this notion of an explicit promotions policy that says that your promotion will be determined upon how well you use your de-escalation protocols that you've been trained for, is something that I think is very effective because it says your career path is a path toward a guardian culture, toward de-escalation. And it's not going to go forward if you're using force excessively or inappropriately. And I think one of the things that's also misunderstood a lot, people think that you go to some school and you get training at the academy, at the police academy in de-escalation, then it's all over. The police chief pointed out what they do in Perth Amboy here, which is excellent, which is now spreading. It's per incident training. So anytime there is a use of force incident, however mild it may be, that incident is immediately reviewed with the officer involved. And if there are things that the officer can learn at that point to be more racially sensitive, to be more capable of de-escalating and using de-escalation practices, that's trained in right there on an ongoing basis. And that's what creates this culture change, this continuing training for how to use, as the police chief once told me, the most powerful weapon a police officer has is their voice. How to use their voice instead of having to use force.
Wow, that's interesting. I heard Chief Roman mention that the power of the voice and the power of your presence.
Right.
Very, very powerful. Samantha, here's one for you. When you initiated the protest last year, did you have any idea that we would get to this place where we are now?
No. So initially when beginning the protest, all I had in mind was to protest because of the murder of George Floyd. It was just, it was more so people asking me, like my own peers, like, Sam, what are we gonna do about this? We should protest, everyone's doing something. And so I took it upon myself with my own friend groups and people I've went to school with in Perth Amboy to arrange something. Through that, I was able to meet different mentors, I would call them, I guess. And they advised me to never go into a protest blindly, to always have some type of intention, some type of motive when it comes to a protest. And so once I was given that advice, I came up with a list of demands, and we had our protest and it was very successful. And then after that, that's when I was reached out by the Citizens Campaign with Harry, and I got in contact with the NAACP in our region. And from there, we were able to collaborate and start working on this ordinance for de-escalation. And since then, I've just kind of been like riding the wave, I guess you could call it, and just doing the work that's necessary of me and not saying no to any opportunity that comes by.
Great, great. And perhaps there are others who are watching this webinar, listening to this discussion, and you would like more information. Again, I advise you to take a look at our website. You will find many resources there. You will find individuals that you can be in touch with to learn more about leadership and no blame problem solving. We can put you in touch with our guests that are here today. Additional comments from our panelists?
One thing I think that's important that helps with de-escalation, and it helps with community engagement, community partnerships, is intertwining your faith-based leaders within your police department. And Carol, you're fully aware of this with our police chaplain corps.
Absolutely.
That's how I have such a good relationship with Cathedral International, as you know.
Yes.
Because of our police chaplain corps. No one knows your community better than your faith-based leaders. In Perth Amboy, and I'm sure Patterson's the same way, it's a very spiritual community, and people rely on their pastors, their reverends, the rabbis, their priests, whoever, whatever faith you believe in, for guidance and information. And you develop a good relationship with them, and you partner with them, and they become your ally. That is a great ally to bring out into the community, because now if an incident happens, they go to their pastor, their reverend, whoever, and they discuss what the issue was. They come to me or a police officer, and we have an open discussion about it, and we solve it before it becomes an issue. Because many times issues aren't really that much of an issue. It's just a case of misunderstanding. And by engaging your faith-based leaders, it's a huge plus for your community and your police department as well.
Thank you for mentioning that, Chief Roman, and it certainly does build trust as well. Now that I'm working here with the Citizens Campaign, we are pulling together a campaign called Share the Power, and we are promoting that initiative to our faith-based community, helping them to understand this process of leadership and no blame problem solving, building more trust so that our citizens around the state, around the country, can become citizen leaders. Citizen leaders. That's exactly what we're doing here. And again, if you'd like more information, please go to our website, www.thecitizenscampaign.org. Harry, I know you've got a plenty to say about that.
Before I say anything, though, I just want to thank all of the panelists. It's such wonderful panelists. I point out, not to embarrass him, but Mayor Saya actually was involved in our earlier training when we started years and years ago. And he's a perfect example of the no blame approach in the way that he governs Patterson. Look, I really am excited by the fact that we may be able to enter more of a guardian culture all around, that we can be guardians for each other, that we can trust each other, that we can work together. And, the chief pointed out, get with the faith-based leaders. I'd add to that, get with the young people. The wonderful thing, I got to point out, this is a funny thing. And when we presented the ordinance to the city council initially, a number of citizens came up and objected to the fact that there would be young people on this advisory board. What do they know? They're inexperienced, et cetera, et cetera. And it was the police officers of Perth Amboy that said, no, we want to hear from the young people. We need to have their voice. We need to be able to have a dialogue with them. And I think that bodes very positively for the future. I mean, we've got a lot of work to do to de-escalate as a society, but I think incorporating young people in the process means that we've got a bright future.
We certainly do have a bright future. Any other comments that our panelists would like to make? Samantha?
Yeah, I would love to. Okay, if there's any young people watching, self-identified young people, I have 2 tips. First one is read. You have to read a lot. You have to understand the history of your country. You have to understand the history of the practices that our country has, of, if you're interested in de-escalation and police reform, you have to understand what it is to be a police officer and the history of policing in America and where it's going from this point onwards. And secondly is network. Don't be afraid to go up to the man in the suit and ask him, hey, what's your name, what's going on, what's happening. I feel like as a youth, a lot of times we feel ostracized, and a lot of times we feel like, oh, like, you have to get that degree first or some type of credential that will make you seem like powerful. But as Chief McKinnon said, and as I guess the ongoing theme of the day is the power in your own voice. So don't be afraid to go and ask questions and introduce yourself and get involved in whatever way you can, because just doing a little bit is doing way more than anyone would expect of you. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Thank you for wrapping things up for us here. We want to thank each of our panelists for taking the time to be with us today. Thank you all for watching, for submitting your questions. Continue following us. We're on social media. Follow us, like us, comment about what we're doing. And again, for those towns, cities, those leaders that are watching and you'd like more information, perhaps you'd like to be in touch with our mayors, please reach out to those individuals that you see there on our website. If no one else has any other words, any comments, we're going to close today's roundtable discussion on police reform. Again, thank you for being here with us. Goodbye.
Thank you, Carol.
All right,
Thank you,
thank
Carol.
you.
Thanks,
Our
everybody.
Thank you,
pleasure.
Harry,
Yes.
Chief, Mayor. Thank you,
Thank
Samantha.
you, everybody.
Yeah.
God bless everyone.